One of the advantages of a rent-own for the homeowner is that the tenant buyer is responsible for the day-to-day repairs and maintenance of the house. Now, typically it boils down to a specific dollar value. Now, in our practice, we set the limit at $1,000 per instance on the majority of the properties we deal with, but you can set your own limit. We find that the value of $1,000 per instance covers just about every item in the home, except maybe the hot water tank or the furnace, if you have furnaces in your area, or the air exchanger, or the roof, for example. So the major components of a house would still have to be covered by the owner, but typically the day-to-day maintenance, the repairs, the appliances, that sort of thing would be covered by the tenant buyer. However, if you have high-end appliances, you may want to increase the value up to the purchase price of the high-end appliance. So maybe it's $1,500 or $2,500. It really depends on the replacement cost of that same type of appliance. These, of course, are repairs and maintenance that are of no fault to the tenant. So if the dishwasher breaks for no fault of the tenant and it needs a new dishwasher because it just can't be repaired, now the tenant's going to have to pay for that. Now, if the furnace goes or the air exchanger goes and it's over the $1,000 per instance and the tenant did not do anything to it, then obviously it's going to have to get replaced by the homeowner. Now, any damages that the tenant makes or causes, they are ultimately responsible for fixing. So things like breaking a window, putting a hole in the wall, etc., they're the responsibility of the tenant, just as if you're in a basic landlord-tenant situation or a typical rental. So set your repair limit to what covers the majority of the items in your home. So this way you're not going to get phone calls for things like plugged toilets or the dishwasher breaks down or the freezer goes in the fridge. You're not going to get calls on those items because it's the responsibility of the tenant buyer to have those items fixed or replace them because they fall below the threshold of the dollar value that you've set out in your rent-to-own. Now, the option contract should set out in more detail what the tenant is responsible for and the exact dollar value. Do not put in the lease that the tenant is responsible for fixing anything or assigning a dollar value to it. Now, in most cases, the tenant is not responsible for paying anything that breaks, just for fixing the things that they damage when it comes to a traditional lease. So if the dishwasher breaks, then on a traditional landlord-tenant act or just on the lease portion, it would never say that they have to buy a new one. That goes in the option contract. Now, the reason being is the lease needs to stand alone. So having that in the lease goes against generally the Landlord and Tenant Act or whatever governing body governs the relationship between a landlord and tenant. So you'd never put in the lease a specific dollar value or that the tenant is responsible for any repairs and maintenance. So it's very important you understand what goes in the lease and what goes in the option regarding maintenance and repairs. The easiest way, if you recall, is that the lease and the option must stand on their own. If you were to just lease the property only, what could you and what couldn't you put in the lease? If you don't know, you should really find out what governs the landlord and tenant relationship and read the documentation or get a copy of their lease. If it has to do with fixing, replacing, and a dollar value, then it needs to go in the option contract. And that is who covers the repairs during the course of the rent-to-own.